Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. And Devon Gates, everyone. What an amazing set. Keeping us all on our toes all the time.
Gotta improvise.
Yeah, no, it's improvising. I know, it was good. I think it's like experimental to do things that you wouldn't expect. Yeah. And that's exactly what happened.
Exactly.
So you're coming in from Boston.
Yeah.
And I guess just wanted to start off, like, have you done much of solo performance? And what kind of has inspired you in your, like, writing process and doing solo work?
Well, it's funny because I do a lot of solo work when I'm, writing, and, like, usually, like, when I write, it'll come from, like, just doing, voice and bass stuff. But I usually bring it in to a band and orchestrate it. And we were talking about this last night at the Hungry Brain gig. Sometimes it can feel so, like, exposed, to be like, wow, this doesn't go anywhere unless I am the one driving it. Like, definitely. It's just you.
Definitely.
But there's also, like, a huge freedom in that. That's been really interesting to explore. And especially, like, getting to work with your own music. Like, it's so fun to play with songs that you've played in a band for a while and then take it out of that context and sort of re-examine it and be like, oh, wait, I've actually never heard it this way, or I haven't heard this in a long time this way. Like, one of those tunes we played, like, Don't Wait, I haven't played that tune solo in, like, years, probably, like, since I first wrote it. And so it really, like, kind of brings it back to its kind of essence when you play it solo, and you also can't hide. There's no hiding, which is just, like, good practice in trying to be as fearless as possible,
Yes, being fearless. And I feel like, too, the lyrics, really speak to, I don't know, conversations that we've had. And so it's cool to, like, hear that, you're trying to process those thoughts of, like, not waiting for things to happen, and giving yourself space, too, because things are very chaotic. And I know things are very busy for you. We met in school, actually, at Berklee in Boston. And Devon has one more semester. So your life has been very busy.
Indeed, yeah.
And do you feel like when you, like, write those songs, they're, like, telling yourself, like, reminding yourself that you need to take a break? Do you feel like it kind of, like, you are able to, like, live it?
Yeah, I feel like I write songs, like, to remind myself to do things. Like, you'll notice, like, I'm noticing a lot of my songs are actually, like, statements, like, commands. Like, come here. Yeah. I have a song called Don't Wait. So really, I think a lot of them are reminders to myself to try to embody these things that I'm thinking about, or ways that I want to aspirationally live, and they're also often really inspired by things I read. We both read a lot of books that are, like, trying to inform us on how to exist in the world that we live in. And so it's really, like, a way that I think through and process. And I don't know. People write songs about the same, like, 2 or 3 things, and it can get a little dull. So sometimes it's fun to write songs about something different.
Yeah, totally. What are some books that have inspired, or things you've read?
Yeah, Jenny Odell's How to Do Nothing. It was, like, a pandemic book, and that really, like, inspired a lot of Skip That Step, which is, of course, a pandemic song. It's, like, about what if we took the time that we spent worrying about needless things and spent that time actually doing things that were good for our spirits. I would save a lot of time. So much time. So that book, Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown, we've been talking about a lot this weekend. Audre Lorde's Uses of the Erotic. A lot of, like, Black feminist literature that I've gotten the chance to read over the past few years, trying to remind myself via writing a song about it.
Yeah, and it also reminds all of us, so I appreciate it.
That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I think there's, like, affirmations and statements that is important to constantly remind yourself, because you might read about it, but then you forget. So you have to kind of make it a practice of reminding. Yeah, and something I really admire about you is that you're very thoughtful, and you know a lot about the world, and it's not just like music to you. Like, I feel like you're talking about something greater. You're not just a musician. You're like, yeah. And so I guess if you wanted to talk about that like experience for you, some more background information. So Devon is at Berklee doing a music degree, and at Harvard doing a anthropology degree, right? Yeah, anthropology.
Yeah.
So, and I know you do a lot of work within the gender justice movement. So I was wondering, like, could you talk about that experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I see music as like a vessel to communicate things. And so, yeah, I've always been interested more so in, like, what are we saying and why are we saying what we're saying musically. And then, like, trying to focus on, like, how do you communicate that best. But, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've always tried to focus on making sure that my music tries to tell a story. And that's always the goal, because I feel like it's so powerful. Like, Bernice Regan, you've heard Toshi Regan, her mother was a civil rights activist, super big in, like, the SNCC protests and activism in the 60s in the civil rights movement. And she, like, has this article, this beautiful piece of writing where she talks about, like, it's not about the song, it's about the singing. And I just think that's so beautiful, because sometimes I feel like as musicians we get so caught up in the craft and the, you know, we start playing for other musicians, and, you know, we lose sight of what we're actually trying to say and how we're actually trying to connect with folks, you know. And I feel like I get that a lot by talking to my parents after my gigs, because they're not musicians. I don't come from a family of musicians, and so it can be really interesting to, like, play, you know, a show and get their feedback, because something I feel like is, like, you know, is, like, my best work and is, like, so cutting edge and breaking grounds. They'll be like, that was nice, you know. But they'll be like, I really like that other one where you were, like, looking at the audience and making eye contact, and, you know, which is, like, sometimes I'm like, oh man, but it's really helpful because it keeps me grounded and reminds me, yeah, that it's about how you're connecting with an audience, no matter what the song is, what the situation is, who you're playing with, where you're playing, and that's what can make it so powerful. Like Bernice Regan talking about it in the context of the civil rights movement, like, you know, people singing together being literally like a way of collective liberation, you know, and of moving people towards, like, progress and keeping people connected and together through that, like, very, like, difficult and painful process. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that being able to study music, but also study, you know, and study, like, in and outside of what you might call school, just life and the world, and why we're playing and what we're playing about, really just, like, can only make it more powerful. And especially thinking about, like, the personal being political and everything being political, and especially, like, playing Black American music, like, it's just so ingrained in the history of the music. And so we have a responsibility also, I feel, to always have that in mind, the power that we have.
Totally. Yeah, and like you said, it's not just in school. And I think you're doing a lot. You're actually, like, putting what you learn, like, the theory, into, like, practice. I know this summer you were working, or actually, was it the year you were working in a prison?
Yeah.
So what was that experience like?
Yeah, this past, like, school year, I got to work with the Harvard Radcliffe Institute in Boston. They have a prison studies project, which is ironic because they also invest in prisons. But we do what we can, and we try to be in but not of institutions. But
True.
yeah,
Use the resources.
exactly. But through that program, we started a working group at Nashua Street Jail, which is a men's jail in Boston. Actually, like housed Malcolm X for a little while, so it's a very like historical place. Is a deep history, and we taught a music workshop there every week for a couple hours on Thursdays. And we brought musicians and people from Berklee and Harvard and just the community who wanted to come and bring their instruments. And we got the instruments in the jail, which was like a first for the jail, and played music and jammed basically with folks. And it was a really beautiful experience because, we came into it just thinking like, okay, well, it's hard to know how meaningful something like that might be because, it's like you're there for a couple hours every week and then you leave and they're still there. But the best parts of it would be when like we would play something and like afterwards they'd be like I forgot where I was. Yeah. Like I felt like I was somewhere else. Like those would be the times where I'd be like, wow, okay, like sometimes we get so cynical, I feel like, about like the value of music and what music can mean because it's so devalued in the rest of the world. And sometimes you are just like, man, what does me like playing a song have to do with anything? I don't want to be one of those really self-important people that thinks that like art, is like the universal solvent. And, obviously we need very concrete and definitive, changes in every aspect of, every discipline and every aspect of the world. But yeah, just to hear that like those little moments of reminding people of our shared humanity and like it can literally be like a time traveling agent, like a liberation technology, like More Mother, who we talk about a lot, calls it. Yeah, it really actually like made me feel more hopeful about the power of music, ironically.
Wow.
And there's some dope musicians we got to work with.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Wow. Yeah. And I know too, like you've been working with a lot of gender work. There's an institute at Berklee that recently started called the Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice. And I know you've been a big part of that. So what has that been like?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how I met Lily, which is beautiful. Yeah, and I mean, the JGJ, as we call it, was very important for me as someone who wasn't really sold on the idea of, like, could I really be a jazz musician or, like, a musician? My parents are musicians, and it just seemed very lofty, and like, how does one actually do that? And I don't really see anyone that looks like me doing it besides literally the one person that everyone always compares me to at like every gig, and which is very intimidating and flattering and confusing, very layered. But it's like, so it was very hard, like being in all male worlds all through like high school and getting to college and having it be like a completely different world, like playing in an ensemble where not only was I not the only, non-male identifying person, it was like all non-men. And, the professors, like being taught by Linda O on bass was the first time my bass professor, was not a man. And just very seemingly, I guess, insignificant things like that are actually so important. I didn't realize how much I was overthinking a lot of, how I approached the music. I didn't realize how much of the toxic masculinity that can just be like ingrained in these spaces. And although I was like, very fortunate to have some really kind mentors who believed in me in high school, it really opened me up to a lot of new possibilities, and it gave me a really great community of other, young women and non-male identifying folks that are also trying to play this music, which made me feel a lot less alone. So I'm really grateful to the Institute for so many reasons, and that's why it's been so special to get to work for them on some projects, like the New Standards book, which is the book of 101 lead sheets by female jazz composers, which is super important.
And you're in it?
Yeah, awesome. But it just is really like special to me because it's like, oh man, like I wish I could have had that when I was growing up, learning all like, you know, these other tunes, or like this museum exhibit like that we worked on. It's just really cool to see people actually talking about and doing work on this thing that like I didn't even have a language for until like a few years ago.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like the mentors have been very like life-changing.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, and you've gotten to work with like Terri Lyne Carrington and like you said, Linda O and Chris Davis, and I think it's cool because you're not only like working with like your mentors, but you're becoming the mentor. Because I know you've created a program this summer.
Yeah.
For non-men in Boston. How's that been?
It's been really cool. Like I have to do like, well, I don't have to. I like to do like an undergraduate thesis at Harvard from the anthropology department. But I was like, I want to study jazz because that's what I do. And I want to study jazz and gender because it's my experience and it's important. And there's actually very little research on the subject, that especially very little that's done by people that actually play the music, and by women that actually play the music, surprisingly. So, but I also didn't want to just do like a recital. So I created an artist collective and got some funding to be able to commission 10 non-male artists in the Boston area to create pieces, kind of inspired by the Mutual Mentorship for Musicians program, which is like a duo commission program where you commission 10 people and you pair them together and they work on little duo compositions and they premiere them. And it's a great way to like build community and introduce people to each other who wouldn't normally meet, like people from different parts of the music scene, you know, like the jazz folks and the Berklee folks and the NEC folks and the creative music folks and the classically trained folks and, you know, self-trained folks. So that's been really fun to try to create a space. And we've also been hosting like public conversations, which I was like, is anyone going to come? But then like you get snacks from Trader Joe's and people actually show up, and we have these really beautiful, like honest, vulnerable conversations, because even though there are these institutional spaces opening up, the informal community building and like the kind of underground stuff is like what's been even more meaningful to me. And so it's great to be able to like facilitate the space for that and just be like, oh, cool, let's, you know, someone's having an issue in their classes trying to figure out how to teach in a way that's like, you know, more equitable in this way. Like, let's all talk about it and strategy share and help each other, you know, or just like vent and like listen to each other vent for a bit. That's been really cool. And I'm just really interested to see like how it goes. And it's also interesting from an anthropology research perspective, because like a lot of anthropology research is like very outsider, insider focused, and it's very nice to study a world that I feel actually a part of. It helps like rule out a couple of the major pitfalls of the discipline. So I'm interested to see how it works out, but yeah.
Yeah, no. Are you going to continue it through the year?
I don't have the funding to continue it through the year, but if I did, somehow get more funding, I would. And like I don't know. It for me, it's less about the length of the project and more so like, oh, cool. Like now this person knows this person. They're gonna call each other for gigs. Like, you know, the network will be expanded, and like, hopefully other people will also do this. You know.
Like creating like a framework and showing that it's possible to do this, so other people do it.
Yeah, and we're also like gonna publish an anthology. Later. An
anthology of like the study on it.
Basically, I'm asking everyone to like contribute a piece of writing, just like M3 does, sort of just about anything they want, but you know, probably related to like these themes and like the research. And I've been asking folks to keep a journal throughout the process also, and I think that'll be really interesting to just see, because like it's also obviously anything you do with people and like that you like try to band lead or whatever like is definitely not always perfect, and so it'll be really interesting to see what you can learn from, you know, the process, both good and bad, you know.
Totally. Yeah, I'm very excited to check that out. And so you're finishing up school, and I know you'll be in London for a few months the fall, and then you'll be out of school. Yeah. And how are you feeling about that? Like, what are you excited for?
Yeah. How I'm feeling about that definitely depends on the day, how that day is gone. I'm excited to, for the first time in my life, like not be in school and see what that phase of life brings and is like. Trust is hard. I should write a song about that to remind myself to do that. And so it can be easier to just like cling on to like a program or a school or something like that. And of course, being a freelance musician is definitely a study in, I guess, like how to be okay with constant change and uncertainty. And so I think, what will get me through will just be like having wonderful friends and like community and just taking it day by day and not sweating the small stuff. Mainly I'm excited for possibilities because I think that every time that I am skeptical of what's going to happen, everything always works out. And it's much more beautiful than like I would have planned for it to be.
Definitely. It's like a learning process too, being out of school and not like, tied to something when you've done it literally your whole life. Yeah. And like you said, it's like trust in yourself. Yeah. But I'm excited for you. Do you have any like plans musically coming up?
Keep writing. I really enjoyed starting to band lead a little bit. But also just not really, planning too much or rather like boxing myself in. Yeah. And really just being open to traveling new places and experiencing new things, because the more places I go and the more things I do, the more limited I realize that my scope and perspective is. Mm-hmm. So I guess just like trying to be as open as possible.
Totally. Yeah. That's great. Well, I guess just wanted to see, does anyone have any questions? Audience questions? No. Oh my God, the sun. Scoot in again. Everyone's quiet today.
I mean, there was some singing, which is beautiful.
Yeah, everyone is tired from the singing. I really appreciate it. Well, I mean, when will you be back in Chicago?
I don't know, but I'd like to come back. I've been having a really great time this weekend. It's been really fun. This is an awesome city with an awesome, like, creative music, experimental music scene. Like, whoa. It's really heartening to, like, see so many people come, to see someone that I'm sure don't even really know who they are. They're like, who is this lady? So I really appreciate you coming out. And yeah. I'm trying to go see the Bean, but apparently it's closed. So I have to come back just to see that.
Apparently the Bean is closed.
Apparently it's closed.
That's what Ken said.
Yeah, so... Yeah, presumably I'll be back when the Bean is back open.
Back when the Bean. Are you from Boston?
I'm from Atlanta, originally. I just went to school in Boston, so I've been there for the past 4 years. It's very cold. It was an adjustment. But yeah, so I don't know if anyone's from Atlanta, but I love it there. It's the best. It's and really intimate scene and very tight-knit group of people there also playing jazz and playing experimental music and it was a good place to grow up. I want to go back.
Yeah, totally. And it seems like it's been obviously a huge influence on who you are and your energy. Being in Boston is a lot different than people in Boston.
Indeed.
You have way more of the welcoming communal energy.
I'm so glad. Yeah. I'm so glad. Well, a Midwesterner such as yourself, I'm sure can, sympathize. The winter, the very Northeastern thing of just not talking to anyone while you're walking down the street, and so I didn't really I thought everyone hated me or something. I was so confused. No one was hey, everyone was just Yeah, and getting used to like getting my bass on like the public transit, because everyone drives in Atlanta, and so like, but no, one really drives in Boston. So like getting my bass like on the bus and just like that whole process has been a very interesting. But now I feel like I can do the like big city life, like Northeasterner thing. But yeah, it was definitely an adjustment, even though now I feel a lot more dropped into it. And the pandemic obviously was like a huge disruptor. But it was nice to be at home for a bit and just like, have that break to be able to appreciate what I love about both places more, when I went back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm happy you're here.
Me too. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan.